Commander Velthor of the Nexari Empire sat hunched in the darkest corner of Station Omega's cantina, his massive frame casting long shadows across the metal floor. The cantina buzzed with the usual mix of traders, smugglers, and drifters from across the galaxy, but they all gave the old warrior a wide berth. His 6 crimson eyes swept the room constantly, a habit burned into him by decades of warfare. Each eye moved independently, watching different angles, searching for threats that might never come. His once magnificent purple carapace, which had gleamed like polished armor in his youth, now told the story of 1,000 battles. Deep scoring from plasma burns ran along his left shoulder. A crater-like dent near his heart showed where a human bullet had nearly ended his life. His right arm bore the twisted metal of an old prosthetic where the original had been lost to something he still refused to discuss. The proud crest atop his head, once a symbol of his rank in the Nexari war machine, was cracked and dulled with age. The cantina's other patrons whispered about him sometimes. The old Nexari who survived the human war. The commander who had seen his entire fleet reduced to space dust. The warrior who would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, calling out warnings about creatures that fought like demons and died like saints. Velthor lifted his glass of Altarian whiskey with a trembling claw, the amber liquid catching the dim light. He had been drinking here for 3 cycles now, ever since his medical discharge from the Nexari Navy. The doctors said his mind was fractured, that he saw enemies where there were none. But Velthor knew better. He had seen the truth about humans, and that truth had broken something inside him that could never be fixed. The cantina door hissed open, and a young Nexari female entered. Her carapace was bright purple, unmarked by battle, and her movements held the confidence of someone who had never faced real danger. She looked around the room with the eager eyes of youth, her recording device clutched in her primary hand. Velthor tried to sink deeper into his corner, but it was too late. She had spotted him. Commander Velthor. Her voice was high and excited as she approached his table. "I'm Kexara from the Galactic News Network. I've been looking for you everywhere." Velthor's mandibles clicked in irritation, a sound like grinding metal. "Go away, youngling. I've nothing to say to your kind." But Kexara pulled out a chair and sat down anyway, her recorder already activated. "Sir, I'm doing a documentary about the human war. The people need to hear your story. You're one of the few survivors of the Battle of Proxima Station, the human war." The Velthor's voice was bitter, filled with dark humor. "Is that what they're calling it now? How sanitized? How clean?" He took another drink, his eyes never leaving. The young journalist's face. "It wasn't a war, child. It was a lesson. A very expensive, very bloody lesson about what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness." Kexara leaned forward eagerly. "The Galactic Council is considering humanity for membership. Some say they could be valuable allies. Others worry about their violent nature. What's your opinion?" Velthor's glass slipped from his claw and shattered on the floor. The sound made several patrons jump, but the old commander didn't even notice. His 6 eyes were suddenly wide with terror, pupils dilated as if he were seeing ghosts. "Allies." His voice boomed across the cantina, causing conversations to stop and heads to turn.
"Ally food."
"You want to make allies of the species that turned my entire battle group into floating debris? The creatures that fought with nuclear fire and laughed while they died?" The cantina fell silent. Even the background music seemed to fade away. Kexara's recorder trembled in her hands. "Sir, I just want to understand." "Understand?" Velthor leaned across the table, his scarred face inches from hers. "You want to understand humans? Very well, little journalist. But don't say I didn't warn you when you can't sleep at night. When you jump at shadows and hear their war cries in the silence." He settled back into his chair, his eyes growing distant, as if he were seeing through time itself. "Record this, youngling. Record every word. Maybe if the council hears the truth, they'll think twice about their precious membership invitation." Kexara activated her recorder with shaking hands. Something in the old warrior's voice told her she was about to hear. Something that would change everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. It began 30 cycles ago. Velthor's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the silent cantina. We thought we were dealing with primitives, a young species that had barely learned to fly between stars. Their ships were crude, their weapons simple, their technology laughably primitive compared to our glorious empire. His claws scraped against the table, leaving deep gouges in the metal. We were so very, very wrong. Velthor's eyes closed as he remembered that first meeting. The memory was still sharp after all these years, like a blade that refused to dull. Diplomatic station was called Harmony Point, he began, his voice taking on the tone of someone reliving a nightmare. It was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where different species could meet peacefully. The Nexar Empire had used it dozens of times to negotiate with new worlds before we conquered them. Kexara shifted in her seat, her recorder capturing every word. The humans sent a single ship, not a massive dreadnought like we expected, but a small vessel they called the Soul Express. It was maybe a tenth the size of our diplomatic cruiser, and it looked like it was held together with metal scraps and hope. Velthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. We thought it was a joke. He took another sip of his drink, the liquid burning down his throat like liquid fire. Their leader was Captain Kim Hanna. She walked into that conference room like she owned the entire station. She was tiny, maybe half the height of our smallest warrior, with black hair, tied back in a simple knot, and dark eyes that seemed to see right through you. She wore a blue uniform with patches and medals we didn't recognize. Velthor's claws tapped against the table as he spoke. Admiral Morgith was leading our delegation. It was massive, even by Nexar standards, with battle scars covering his golden carapace. He had conquered 17 worlds and never lost a single battle. When he saw Kim Hanna walk in, he actually laughed. What did they discuss? Kexara asked, leaning forward. The usual demands: surrender, tribute, integration into the Empire. Morgith offered them the standard deal we gave to all new species. Submit peacefully, and we would allow them to keep their culture and some level of self-governance. Refuse, and we would take their worlds by force. Velthor's voice grew darker. Kim Hanna listened to the entire presentation without saying a word. When Morgith finished, she stood up and walked to the viewing port. Hundreds of ships floating in formation, their weapons charging up to demonstrate our power. Then she turned around and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives its prey right before it strikes. The old commander's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said, "Admiral, I appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid humans don't do surrender. We do have a counteroffer. Though, leave our space immediately, and we won't have to teach you why Earth is still unconquered after 4 billion years of trying." The conference room erupted in laughter. Even I couldn't help but chuckle. Here was this tiny creature representing a species that had barely learned to fly between stars, threatening the mighty Nexari Empire. Velthor's expression grew grim. Morgith wasn't amused. He stood up, all 8 feet of him, and activated his plasma claws. The energy field around his weapons lit up the room like a small sun. He told Kim Hanna that she had just signed her species' death warrant. Kim Hanna didn't even blink. She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small device, primitive chemical. Explosive, she called it a grenade. She held it up and said, "This little thing has enough power to kill everyone in this room. But I won't use it, because unlike you, humans understand the value of diplomacy." Kexara's eyes widened. She threatened. To kill everyone? That's what we thought at first. But then she explained that she had no intention of using it. She was just making a point about how easily a small, primitive weapon could be deadly if used correctly. She set the grenade on the table and sat back down. Velthor's voice grew heavy with regret. We should have listened to her. We should have taken her word seriously. But we were too proud, too confident in our superiority. The meeting ended with Morgith declaring that the Nexari Empire would demonstrate the price of defiance. He gave the humans 3 days to reconsider before our fleet would move to their colony world of New Sol. Kim Hanna gathered her things and walked toward the door. Just before she left, she turned back and said something that still haunts me. She said, "Admiral, you're about to learn why humans are the apex predators of a planet where everything tries to kill everything else. I hope you're ready for that lesson." The cantina was completely silent now. every patron straining to hear the old warrior's words. 3 days later, our fleet arrived at New Sol. It was a beautiful world, with blue oceans and green continents, not unlike our own homeworld. The human colony was small, maybe 100,000 people with basic defensive installations. In a tiny fleet of cargo ships and mining vessels, Velthar's voice cracked with emotion. We expected them to surrender as soon as they saw our ships. Instead, Kim Hannah's voice came over the communications channel. She was calm, almost cheerful. She said, "Welcome to New Sol. I hope you brought body bags." Admiral Morgoth ordered the attack immediately. Our plasma cannons lit up the void. Our quantum torpedoes streaked toward their pitiful defenses. It should have been over in minutes, but then something impossible happened. The humans fought back. Velthar's claws dug deeper into the table. As he continued his tale, the metal groaned under the pressure, but the old warrior seemed unaware of his own strength. 6 months into the war, everything changed, he said, his voice barely audible above the cantina's background noise. We had taken 3 human colonies and thought we were winning. Our intelligence reports showed that human resistance was weakening, their fleets scattered and broken. We were preparing for the final push to Earth itself. Then we encountered Dr. Lee Minho. Kexara noticed that several other patrons had quietly moved closer to their table, drawn by the old commander's story, despite their fear of him. Lee Minho was a human scientist working on some backwater research station near the Proxima system. Our scouts reported that he was young, maybe 30 human years, with messy black hair and thick glasses. He looked harmless, like most humans do when they're not trying to kill you. Velthar's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter laughter. We captured his station during a routine sweep, expecting to find mining equipment or agricultural research. Instead, we found a laboratory filled with horrors. The old warrior's eyes grew distant as he remembered. The first thing we discovered was a plasma cannon, not one of ours, but something new. It was smaller, more efficient, and when our tech specialists examined it, they realized it was completely redesigned from the inside out. This human had taken our most advanced weapon technology and made it better. How is that possible? Sarah whispered. Human minds work differently than ours, Velthar explained. We Nexari are logical, methodical. We improve our technology in small, careful steps over centuries. Humans see a problem and immediately start thinking of crazy solutions. That shouldn't work, but somehow do. He leaned back in his chair, his 6 eyes unfocused as he recalled the memory. Lee Minho had somehow figured out how to combine our plasma technology with their primitive chemical explosives. The result was a weapon that could punch through our heaviest shields like they were made of paper. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what he called quantum mines. Velthar's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Imagine a weapon that exists and doesn't exist at the same time. One moment it's there, the next moment it's phased out of reality completely. Our sensors couldn't detect them, our shields couldn't stop them, and our weapons couldn't destroy them because they weren't always there to be destroyed. The first time we encountered them, we lost an entire patrol squadron. 12 ships, gone in seconds. No warning, no chance to fight back. One moment they were flying in formation, the next moment they were expanding clouds of superheated gas. Sarah. Recorders shook in her hands. How did he create such things? We captured Lee Minho during a raid on his research station. When we interrogated him, he just smiled and said that humans had been playing with quantum physics for decades. He had simply applied their theoretical knowledge to practical warfare. Velthar's voice grew darker. He offered to teach us how the mines worked, but there was a price. He wanted to see our ship designs, our shield technology, our weapon systems. We thought we were clever. We gave him access to our technical manuals, thinking we could learn from him and then dispose of him when we were done. Within 2 weeks, he'd found 17 different ways to improve our own weapons and 3 critical weaknesses in our ship designs that we had never noticed. Then he escaped. The cantina had gone completely silent. Even the background music had stopped. How? Kexara asked. He had been working on more than just weapons. He had figured out how to phase objects in and out of reality. Remember? He walked through the walls of his prison cell and vanished into the quantum foam. By the time we realized what had happened, he was already back with the human fleet, sharing everything he had learned about us. Velthar took a long drink, his hands shaking slightly. But Lee Minho's weapons were nothing compared to what came next. The psychological warfare. They had this soldier, Corporal Choi Yuna. She was small, even by human standards, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see right through you. She specialized in boarding actions, leading teams of human marines onto our ships. At first, we thought she was just another human warrior. Dangerous, yes, but nothing we couldn't handle. Our ships were designed to repel boarders, with narrow corridors and automated defenses. But Choi Yuna and her teams moved through our ships like ghosts. Velthar's voice cracked with emotion. The strange thing was, they rarely killed anyone. They would capture a ship, disable its weapons and engines, and then they would leave messages. What kind of messages? Pictures, recordings, personal items. Velthor's 6 eyes focused on Kexara's face. They would find the personal quarters of our crew members and leave behind recordings of human families. Children singing lullabies, mothers telling bedtime stories, fathers teaching their sons how to throw a ball. They wanted us to know that every human we killed had people who loved them, people who would miss them, people who would grieve for them. Kexara frowned. But why? What was the point, don't you see? They were showing us that they were more than just warriors. They were people with families, hopes, dreams, just like us. Velthor's voice grew quieter. It was the cruelest weapon they could have used. Our soldiers started having nightmares. They would wake up screaming, haunted by images of human children, crying for parents who would never come home. Some of them refused to fight anymore, claiming they couldn't bear the thought of creating more orphans. The worst part was a recording that Choi Yuna left on every ship she captured. It was a message from Kim Hannah, the human captain we had met at the diplomatic station. She spoke directly to our soldiers, telling them that every human who died in this war had chosen to die protecting their families. She said that humans didn't hate us, they just refused to be conquered. Velthar's voice broke completely. She ended the message by saying that when the war was over, humans would welcome any Nexari who wanted to live in peace. She said that hatred was a luxury that humans couldn't afford because they had learned long ago that survival required cooperation, not domination. Destroyed our morale completely. How do you fight an enemy that offers you friendship even while you're trying to kill them? Velthor's entire body shuddered as he reached the darkest part of his story. The cantina patrons had formed a silent circle around his table, their drinks forgotten as they listened to the old warrior's tale. 2 years, he whispered, his voice so quiet that everyone had to lean in to hear. 2 years we spent hunting the scattered human fleets across the galaxy. We destroyed their colonies one by one, captured their ships, and pushed them back toward their home system. Emperor Zolthek himself declared that the war would end at Earth. Velthor's 6 eyes closed, and for a moment he looked like he was praying. I was aboard the flagship Eternal Domination when our fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 3,000 ships, Kexara. 3,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, destroyers that could crack planets, and enough firepower to sterilize 100 worlds. We expected to find Earth defenseless. Their main fleet had been scattered, their colonies destroyed, their technology overwhelmed. What resistance could one small blue world offer against the might of the Nexari Empire? The old commander opened his eyes, and Kexara saw something in them that made her blood run cold. Pure, undiluted terror. We found General Nam Taeon waiting for us. The human general was broadcasting from a command ship orbiting Earth. Was an older man, with gray hair and scars across his face that spoke of countless battles. When his image appeared on our screens, he was calm, almost peaceful. He looked like someone who had already accepted his fate. Velthar's claws scraped against the table, said, "Welcome to the Sol System, Admiral. I am General Nam Taeon. of the Earth Defense Force. I want to thank you for giving us 2 years to prepare. It was very considerate of you, Emperor. Zelfek was furious. He demanded immediate surrender, threatening to turn Earth into a ball of molten glass. Namtaehan just smiled and said, "Your Majesty, humans have been trying to kill each other for 10,000 years. We've gotten very good at it. Now we get to try our skills on someone else." That's when we realized something was wrong.
Our
Long-range sensors were picking up massive energy signatures throughout the system. Not just from Earth, but from everywhere. The moon, the asteroid belt, even the outer planets were glowing with contained power. Velthar took a shaking drink. Namtaeon had spent 2 years turning the entire solar system into a weapon. Earth's moon had been hollowed out by mining crews and filled with antimatter charges. The asteroid belt had been converted into a massive kinetic weapon system, with computer-controlled rocks ready to slam into our ships at incredible speeds. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what they had done to their own sun. Keksar's voice was barely a whisper. "Do you mean humans had somehow learned to control solar flares?" They had built stations near their sun that could trigger massive eruptions of plasma and radiation. Directed eruptions that could be aimed like weapons across the entire system. The battle began when Emperor Zelfek ordered the attack. First wave of ships moved toward Earth, weapons charging, ready to end the war with overwhelming force. That's when Namtaeyan gave the order to fire. Velthor's voice cracked. The moon exploded. Not just exploded, but turned into a directed blast of antimatter energy that vaporized our entire second fleet in seconds. 200 ships, gone in a flash of light that could be seen from the edge of the system. Then the asteroid started, moving. Thousands of them, all guided by computer systems, all aimed at our ships. They moved faster than our targeting computers could track, hitting us like bullets from a giant gun. Each impact sent shockwaves through our fleet, but the sun, the sun was the worst. The old warrior's voice dropped to barely a whisper. A human pilot named Chen Mingi volunteered for what they called a solar mission. She flew her fighter directly into the sun's corona. Using some kind of quantum field generator to survive the heat long enough to trigger a controlled flare, she died doing it. The heat burned her alive, but she held her position long enough to aim the flare at our third fleet. A wall of plasma and radiation swept across space, moving at the speed of light. 300 ships, including 2 of our best dreadnoughts, were destroyed in minutes. Velthar's claws trembled as he continued. But what haunts me most wasn't the weapons or the tactics. It was the voices. What voices? Human pilots? Every one of them was broadcasting on open channels as they died, not screams of pain or fear, but messages to their families. This boy, Kim Doyan, couldn't have been more than 15 years old. He was piloting a converted cargo ship loaded with explosives on a collision course with our command vessel. As he flew toward us, he was talking to his parents. He said, "Mom, Dad, I love you. Tell my little sister that her big brother kept his promise to protect her. Tell her that Earth is still free because people like us refuse to give up." He rammed his ship into our command deck while saying those words. The explosion killed 50 of our best officers, including Admiral Morgoth himself. Velthar's voice broke completely. They were children, Keksara. Children fighting like seasoned warriors, sacrificing themselves without hesitation. Not because they wanted to die, but because they wanted their families to live. The battle lasted for days. By the end, our fleet was scattered and broken. We had lost over 2,000 ships, and the few that remained were damaged beyond repair. But the humans, the humans never stopped fighting. On the fourth day, when our retreat was confirmed, Name Taeon made one final broadcast. He said, "This is what happens when you threaten a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to survive. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we were more desperate." He was right. We lost because humans fight like the universe itself is trying to kill them, and they refuse to let it win. They fight with the fury of a species that has clawed its way to the top of a death world's food chain. Velthar looked up at Kexera, his eyes filled with tears. "That's what humans are, youngling. They're survivors. I mean, that makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The cantina fell into complete silence as Veltor prepared to finish his tale. His 6 eyes were wet with tears that he had held back for 30 cycles, and his voice shook with emotions he had buried deep inside his scarred heart. "After the 4th day of battle, our fleet was finished," he whispered. "Emperor Zalthek himself was dead, killed when a human kamikaze pilot crashed into the Imperial flagship. Our command structure was shattered. Our ships were burning wrecks, floating in space, and our surviving crews were trapped in the wreckage." Velthor's claws traced old scars on his carapace. "I was aboard a damaged cruiser, bleeding from 17 different wounds. Half my crew was dead, and the other half was dying. Our life support was failing, our engines were gone, and our communication systems were barely functional." That's when General Nam Tae-yun made his final broadcast. The old warrior's voice grew stronger as he remembered. His image appeared on every functional screen in our fleet. He looked tired, ancient, like the war had aged him decades in just 4 days. But his voice was steady, calm, almost gentle. He said, "To all Nexari vessels, this is General Nam Taeon. Your emperor is dead. Your fleet is broken. Your war is over. But you are not our enemies anymore. You are simply beings who made a mistake. Humans understand mistakes." Kexara leaned forward, her recorder forgotten. What happened next? He called for a ceasefire. Not a surrender, not a negotiation, but a simple ceasefire. He said that any Nexari ship that laid down its weapons would be given medical aid and safe passage home. He said that humans had no desire to conquer or enslave us. They just wanted to be left alone. Velthor's mandibles clicked in amazement. We didn't believe him at first. No species in galactic history had ever offered mercy to a defeated enemy. The law of the galaxy is simple. The strong conquer the weak, and the weak serve or die. But then the human medical ships arrived. The old commander's voice filled with wonder. They were small vessels, marked with red crosses that we later learned was a human symbol for healing. They moved between our damaged ships, offering help to anyone who needed it. No questions asked, no demands for surrender, just aid for the wounded. That's when I met Dr. Seo Ji-hoon. Zelther's eyes closed as he remembered. She was young, maybe 30 human years, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She came aboard my ship with a team of human medics, and they immediately began treating our wounded. She worked for 3 days straight without rest, saving lives that any other species would have let die. I was delirious from blood loss when she treated me, kept asking her why she was helping us, why she was saving the lives of her enemies. She just smiled and said, "Because it's the right thing to do." "The right thing to do," Velthar repeated, his voice filled with awe. "She saved my life not because she had to, not because she gained anything from it, but because she believed it was right." Kexera frowned. "But surely that shows humans are reasonable beings who can be negotiated with." "No." Velthor's voice exploded across the cantina, causing several patrons to jump. His claws slammed into the table, cracking the metal surface. "That's what makes them terrifying. Don't you understand? They chose to spare us." The old warrior stood up, his massive frame towering over the young journalist. "Humans aren't just warriors, Kexara. They're warriors who choose when to fight and when to show mercy. They're predators who decided to be civilized. They're killers who would rather heal than harm." "Think about what that means," Veltar continued, his voice growing more intense. "A species that can turn an entire solar system into a weapon that can breed soldiers willing to die for strangers. that can adapt and innovate faster than any other race in the galaxy. And they choose to be kind. Let me die. She could have let all of us die. Instead, she worked herself to exhaustion, saving lives.
Not because she was ordered to, not because she expected anything in return, but because she believed it was right. Velthor began pacing around.
The table, his agitation growing. After the war, humans sent aid to our damaged worlds. They shared medical technology, helped rebuild our infrastructure, and even invited Nexari scientists to study on Earth. They treated us like friends, not conquered enemies. But they never forgot. They never let their guard down. They were kind. But they were also ready. The old commander stopped pacing and faced Kexara directly. The Galactic Council thinks they're inviting diplomats to join them. They think humans are just another species looking for trade agreements and peaceful cooperation. They're wrong. They're inviting apex predators who have decided to play nice. They're welcoming beings who can wage war with the fury of a dying star, but choose to heal instead of harm. Belthor's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire cantina. And when someone threatens humanity again, and someone will, the galaxy will remember why even the mighty Nexari Empire whispers human names in the dark. Kim Hanna, who faced down an entire fleet with nothing but courage and determination. Gino, who turned a mining ship into a guided missile rather than abandon his friends. Lee Min-ho, who turned captured enemy technology into weapons of impossible power. Choi Yuna, who showed us that even in war, humans remember that their enemies are people too. Nam Tai-yoon, who turned a solar system into a fortress and then chose mercy over vengeance. Minji, who flew into the sun itself to save her world. Kim Do-yen, a child who died like a hero to protect his family. Dr. Seo Ji-hoon saved the lives of her enemies because she believed it was right. Velthor sat back down, suddenly looking older than his years. These are the beings the Council wants to welcome. Warriors who fight like demons and love like saints. Predators who choose to be peaceful. Killers who would rather heal. Kexara turned off her recorder, her hands shaking. What should I tell them? What should I tell the Council? Tell them the truth, Velthor said quietly. Tell them that humans are not our enemies, but they are not our friends either. They're something far more dangerous and far more precious. They are hope. Hope that a species can be both strong and kind. Hope that mercy and power can coexist. Hope that the galaxy can be better than it is, but also tell them to be very, very careful. Because if they threaten humanity, if they mistake kindness for weakness, they will learn what I learned 30 cycles ago. The old warrior finished his drink and stood to leave. Humans are the conquerors of impossible odds. They are the survivors of a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. They are the children of a species that looked at the stars and decided to make them home. And that youngling is far more frightening than any weapon. As Kexara packed up her equipment, Belthor stared out at the stars visible through the cantina's viewing port. Somewhere out there, humans were building their future, raising their children, preparing for whatever challenges the galaxy might throw at them. He whispered a prayer to the ancient gods, asking that humanity would never again have reason to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Because he had seen that capability, and it had changed him forever. The old warrior finished his drink and walked toward the door, leaving behind the hushed conversations and worried whispers of the cantina patrons. His story was told, his warning delivered. Now it was up to the galaxy to decide what to do with the truth. The end.